Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Will the Browns hire Nathan Shieldhouse? That's the question. That's who the Browns are on a plane, probably as I speak, to go see. That's who the Browns are interviewing today, and that's who the Browns are free to hire today or tomorrow or the day after, now that the Los Angeles Rams have been officially eliminated from the playoffs. Nathan Shieldhouse is a name that has been kind of hanging around this head coaching search. A lot of people kind of initially wrote him off as somebody who would be a offensive coordinator hire, maybe, if the Browns were to go for a defensive-minded head coach, or maybe somebody who could be an offensive coordinator for a different hire that they made at head coach. But he has done well enough in his interview process to go into the second interview phase. And anybody who got a second interview, for the most part, is being seriously considered for head coach. Doesn't mean that they are heavily favored to get the job. Obviously, that's not going to be the case with everybody who gets a second interview, but they're getting a chance. And we'll see how Nathan Shieldhouse does with his second opportunity to interview for this job today. We will see what the results are. Part of the reason I'm recording this video is, one, I know that the Browns head coaching search is inevitably winding down. Because of travel issues, because of all the snow in Frisco, Texas, and Dallas, Texas, in the Fort Worth area, I have had some travel issues, which means I'm not going to be in my normal studio on Monday. I will be boarding a flight, and I am kind of concerned that when I'm boarding that flight, the Browns are going to drop the news that they're announcing their head coach hire, because I imagine what they're going to do, and this is how many decisions have been made for the Cleveland Browns, good and bad. What they're going to do is they're going to fly over in Jimmy's jet, meet up with Shieldhouse, talk to Shieldhouse, have that interview, and then after that interview, they're going to huddle up and they're going to make a decision. Now, whether that decision gets announced Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't know, but I am confident that the decision is going to be made Wednesday night on that jet, like most decisions for the Browns have been made. If you go back to every major decision the Browns have made, good and bad, it's happened on Jimmy's jet, right? Because, one, Jimmy has a lot of responsibilities. He owns multiple sports teams. You aren't going to be able to be like, all right, well, let's give ourselves a day and then meet up on Tuesday morning. Like, he might not have a schedule that allows for that. So you got to make these decisions with Jimmy involved. And hopefully Jimmy doesn't override anything like he did in the search with Hugh Jackson, where he independently decided to hire Hugh Jackson. That is literally what happened there. Hopefully Jimmy gets on that jet. They make that decision. And then that's it, right? They make a committee-led decision, and that's the decision they go with. And if that's the case, then that news is probably going to break Monday night. And I'm going to be in the air flying on Monday night. So I didn't want to leave you guys wondering what I would think about a potential Shieldhouse hire until what would literally be, I mean, it would probably be late Tuesday afternoon, because I'm going to have to fly back home, get in a rental car, and then drive down to Mobile. So, and then I'm going to be at Senior Bowl practice immediately. I wouldn't get the time until late at night to make a video reacting to it. So this is to hold you over. If the Browns hire Nathan Shieldhouse, this is to hold you over until I can get a real video out about the hire, reacting to the details that I know. Because I know that when news happens and I can't drop a video immediately, a lot of people hit me up and they're like, hey, man, I need to know what you think. I need to know this and that. And I just want to give you something here. So Nate Shieldhouse, if the Browns hire him, what are my thoughts? Should the Browns hire him if he has a good interview? Let's talk about Nathan Shieldhouse in depth as a candidate. So here's what we know about Mr. Shieldhouse. Nathan Shieldhouse is from Davenport, Iowa. He was born November 8th, 1990. He's 35 years old. He is a former 4-year starter at the University of Illinois as a quarterback. So not a former NFL player, but a former quarterback and a former player, at least at a Big Ten level. He was a former 4-star recruit as well. And where I think that is relevant is that Nathan Shieldhouse has leadership experience, right? The highest position of leadership you can get to on a football team as a player is 4-year starter at a position where leadership is expected. So 4-year starter at linebacker, 4-year starter at safety, 4-year starter at quarterback. Those are the 3 kind of leadership positions traditionally in football. Obviously, leadership can come from other positions, but those are the 3 positions most commonly associated with leadership on that side of the ball. So a 4-year starter at that position, I mean, that's a team leader. It's a team captain. That's somebody who's been in charge, at least on the player side of things, which I do count that experience for something. I don't think it's nothing here. I do like that he is a former quarterback. A lot of great head coaches, for whatever reason, former quarterbacks, right? You go down the list, a lot of dudes who used to play quarterback. Sean McVay is a former quarterback. I'm sure if I go down the list, I think even like LaFleur is a former quarterback. Cliff Kingsbury, who I don't think is a great coach, but a lot of people think he's a great coach. He is a former quarterback. A lot of head coaches are former quarterbacks, even if they aren't successful NFL quarterbacks, are former quarterbacks. And I do think that's for a reason, because quarterback is a position where leadership's kind of expected and demanded. And if you look at like the defensive guys who become head coaches, I'm pretty sure you'll find a common link between former safeties, former linebackers, and being a head coach. I'm not 100% on that. That's just my guess off of watching a lot of football off the top of my head. But I feel like that's probably going to be very true. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but a lot of head coaches are quarterbacks. So I like that. His coaching history, he has very little NFL history. What he does have is a lot of college experience. He was a coach in the college ranks starting in 2015 as a football operations guy, then got promoted to running back coach. That's a significant upgrade in 1 year of coaching. Like, he played at Illinois from 2009 to 2013, was undrafted in 2014, and then 2015, by the end of that season, he's the running backs coach. He gets promoted to offensive assistant for 2 years. He goes to Iowa State, running backs coach, gets quickly promoted to wide receivers coach, stays there for a couple of games, gets promoted again to running game coordinator and running backs coach and wide receivers coach, and then offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach. And then the same thing happened when he joined the NFL. Joined the Rams as an offensive assistant and passing game specialist, and got promoted quickly to pass game coordinator. So one thing that's very clear about his resume, and his resume demonstrates, is that he is undoubtedly a fast riser. Like, this guy, for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason is, but seemingly he joins a institution. That institution recognizes something special in him almost immediately, and quickly rises him up the ranks at multiple different places. It happened at Illinois, and then it happened again at Iowa State, and then he joined the NFL with the Rams, and it happened again. So something about him impresses people, impresses multiple people. Everybody who has talked about him, who has had some leadership over him, seems to characterize him as a very smart, bright, fast riser in the head coaching space. So that is comforting to hear when you're hiring somebody who has 3 years of NFL experience, which I think is the biggest concern about Mr. Shieldhouse. He only has 3 years of experience in the NFL. Now, to be fair to Mr. Shieldhouse, he seems to have a good reputation in the wider coaching community. So, he rose through the ranks fast and he was highly recommended in college. And the same goes for when he got to the NFL. He highly rose up the NFL charts as far as how coaches are perceived. So maybe that's enough for him to have built some level of network. It's really a question of, does it matter if you've had more time coaching, like a Nathan Shieldhouse has had, or more time in the NFL, like a Grant Udinski has had, right? Grant's had 6 years in the league. Nathan has had 3 years. But in Nathan's resume is experience of being in charge, right? He's been the quarterback, a 4-year starter at a major football team, right? Like for a major college football conference, right? That's what I was trying to get out the first time. So I do think that's also important. Look, Nate's resume is very, very young, which means it's not going to blow your socks off, right? The resumes that are going to blow your socks off are the head coaches who are rarely available and want to go to jobs that have quarterbacks. The Browns are going to have access to resumes with huge question marks because these guys have had head coaching jobs and failed multiple times before. Or guys who don't have much of a resume, but you kind of got to work off what's unknown, right? You either want to go for a known quantity that has a limit on their ceiling, or take a risk on somebody who might not have as much risk, or might not have as much as a limit on their ceiling. When it comes to head coaching hires, my personal philosophy is I tend to be more okay with taking the risk. The reason that I feel this way, I think, is very, very simple. You can go 4-12 with it. Well, not 4-12 anymore. We live in a different world. 4-13 with anybody. You can win 5 games with anybody. I have seen coaches who are incredibly qualified, have had success before. They come to Cleveland, they win 5 freaking games. I have seen coaches who aren't very qualified, dumpster fires, and they win 5 games. Anybody can win 5 games in the NFL. So if I'm worried about what the floor is going to be for a head coaching prospect, I don't think there's a meaningful difference from somebody who has a floor as a head coaching prospect and somebody who has an unknown floor. I think if you're not taking one of these guys who are rarely available that you usually got trade picks for, like a Sean Payton or something like that, then you're usually talking about guys who are very capable of winning 5 games in the NFL or having an underwhelming season. And if that's the case, if that's the pool you're picking from, is there really a meaningful difference from taking a risk on a Shieldhouse who could be a really, really good head coach versus like just settling for somebody like a Jim Schwartz who does not have a background that makes you very confident that he's going to be anything better than maybe decent at the position? Like, the best hope for Jim Schwartz would be that he's competent because he hasn't always proven that he's competent as a head coach. So that's something to keep in mind. There are more things to keep in mind that I want to talk about. But first, I got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Oh, we talked about Shieldhouse's resume. I thought I was on Twitter and I saw a great tweet from one of my good buddies, Jared Mueller. Make sure you go check out Dogs by Nature, some of the great work that he has done. But I was reading a tweet that he said, and I think somebody else quote tweeted it and said something else that I thought was very interesting, which is like, so let me start with the tweet let me start with the Jared tweet before I get into anything. Jared Mueller said, you got to remember, being a good head coach and being a good coordinator, not the same thing. We talk about it like it's the same thing because usually when you're hiring a head coach, their coordinator experience is all you really have to judge their level of success by. So we've kind of made it so that like being a head coach is being presented as being a super coordinator. But that's not the job, right? And I think somebody put this in really plain words that made a lot of sense. He called it the Michael Scott effect. See, if you've watched The Office, which I know most of you guys have, one of the things about The Office is that Michael Scott is a completely incompetent manager of The Office. He's not a good boss in The Office. What Michael Scott has shown, especially in the early seasons of The Office, is that he was an excellent salesman. He got promoted because of his skills as a salesman to the manager position. And the show does a pretty good job of illustrating that he wasn't good at that job, and that just because he was good at sales didn't mean that that was going to translate to him being a good manager. And that's something to consider with this head coaching job, right? Are you trying to hire the best coordinator or are you trying to hire the best head coach? You can get lost in the sauce with that because, again, I wouldn't blame people for doing that because most of how this is presented is you're trying to hire the best coordinator. But that's not what's actually happening. You're trying to hire the best coach. And the best coach might not be the best coordinator. Shieldhouse, I think, is interesting as a coach. He intrigues me. Yes, because he played quarterback. Yes, because he was a 4-year starter. Yes, because there's a lot of successful head coaches who have also played the quarterback position. But the reason that's intriguing isn't just because I love quarterbacks. The reason that's intriguing is because the quarterback position is also a management position as much as it's a starting football position on a team. You have to manage a locker room when you're a quarterback. You have to manage your relationship with your tight ends, with your wide receivers, with your offensive line. You're constantly managing your relationship with the defense. You have to motivate guys to get ready for the next drive after a big mistake. You have to make sure your offense doesn't get fixated on the defense or your defense doesn't get too fixated on the offense. There is a reason why a lot of head coaches are former quarterbacks because they have actual tangible experience doing that. And that's the part that's difficult, right, to translate or to project here. And I think that's something to consider because we've seen plenty of guys who are whiz kid coordinators, but maybe they don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to manage people. They just have great ideas and think people need to shut up and listen to those great ideas. And then they get a position of management and they're fucking terrible at it because they're not built for it. Well, Shieldhouse wouldn't have been a 4-year starter if he wasn't good at the management part of things. He wouldn't rise as fastly as he has risen if he wasn't good at the management part of things. And I think that's something that is intriguing about him. Do I think he's guaranteed to be successful? Absolutely not. I think there's a ton of reason to be skeptical of this hire. He's 35 years old. He doesn't have a ton of NFL experience. There's not a lot of confidence about what kind of tree or what kind of coaching staff he can assemble right away. He's never been in charge at the NFL level of anything, and you're going to ask him to translate a lot of things he learned in college to being in charge at the NFL level and learn on the fly. And then if you're just looking at what he has to deal with the offense, I mean, it's not a recipe to build a great offense. And we know that that's going to be something that he gets judged by. The same way Kevin ultimately got judged and fired by that. But the other things that got Kevin fired, right, when we talk about this being a management position, is the fact that Kevin had terrible coordinator hires constantly, did not want to fire the terrible coordinators that he hired constantly, and that Kevin just did not do a great job doing the thing that he was advertised to be, which is the special sauce on the offense, right? You add all those things together, no, he wasn't a failure as a locker room leader, but yeah, he was starting to fail as the leader of this staff because he wasn't bringing together good hires. And then on top of that, the offense went to shit. That can happen to Shieldhouse, right? Like, this offense isn't in a great place. And that's something to worry about, right? How much control is AB going to have in this situation? Like, is this going to be a situation where Shieldhouse has the autonomy to put together his staff? Or is this going to be something where Andrew's going to be looking over his shoulder and assembling his staff for him? I think that can work for some individual hires like a defensive coordinator, but I don't know if that can work if you're trying to hire people that he's going to be directly in charge of and working with day to day on the offensive side of the ball. There's not a certain answer for what the Browns could do at the head coach position. Every single guy they can hire comes with questions. Jim Schwartz, what's he going to look like, even though he was a pretty mediocre head coach the last time he was hired? And he did not have great offenses with Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson, which is just very concerning, right? If you hire Todd Monken, that's somebody who kind of fits the mold of a guy who should be only coordinating offenses because people tend to find him a bit abrasive, right? I don't know Todd Monken, the guy who was kind of telling people how much Freddie Kitchen sucks behind the scenes, allegedly, is the guy that you want to be your head coach. Huge question about that. Is he a great offensive mind? I think so. Is he somebody that can help you? I think so. But is Todd Monken like a perfect head coach hire? Not even close. Grant Udesky, like a lot of the same questions you have for Shieldhouse, you got him for Udesky. So no, there's not a perfect hire the Browns can make. And like I said at the beginning of this search, I'm going to reserve my judgment about, whoever they hire when I start to see a body of work that they can put together. All I can really judge the hire on, if it happens, is the question of, was this done with a process? And the one thing that has come out, and the Browns have even been criticized for, is that this is definitely a hire that they are at least putting forward the effort of a process on, right? All the questionnaires, all the things that they've been doing to get people. And by the way, the questionnaires are incredibly common for job interviews, especially head coach interviews, but like the essays and everything else they've been doing to get people to take this job or to interview for this job, that all feels process oriented. If the hire feels like it matches that process, then I'm going to give it a chance. I'm not going to be immediately so skeptical of it that I'm going to assume it fails. And if that's how this hire goes, whoever it is that they hire, I can understand it, right? Like if they hire Udesky, I get it. If they hire Shieldhouse, I get it. If they hire Jim Schwartz because they weren't blown away by either of those two young guys, I also get that, right? That makes sense. But as far as like my thoughts on them as coaches, I will judge that as I see them put down the work as coaches. This is why I tried to stay away from names during the process, because I feel like when you get involved with names and you start talking up names, people attach themselves to whatever random name that's thrown out there, and they crash out if their name isn't selected and they're not focused on the process. I want to be focused on the process. I want to be focused that this isn't some kind of stupid hire that's going through an agent because Jimmy don't know what to do, or that we're hiring fucking Corn Ferry to run this thing. Like, I want this to be a process-driven, a process-oriented operation, and I want them to be able to ask themselves at the end of the day, to say to themselves at the end of the day, you fired Kevin Stefanski because you aren't happy with the offense, and you think that this hire can solve the offense. Please explain how that's possible. If there is a decent enough answer for that question, then at least it feels like they followed a process, and I think that gives the hire a better chance to be successful. Will they be successful? That's for the football to determine. That's for the wins and losses to determine. But we'll cross those bridges when we get there. But that's my thoughts on if the Browns could hire Shieldhouse. If the Browns have hired him or the Browns have hired somebody else, I have my thoughts on the main three candidates. They hired somebody else outside of that. These are my overall thoughts on the process. So you can kind of get a feel for what I've been looking for in this process. So y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.